we'll switch back over to the track. I would like you guys to do a little thought experiment with me now. Let's pretend that you've just landed your first job in cybersecurity. Maybe some of you might already even be working in the field, so this might be throwing your mind back into the past. For some of you, this might be throwing your mind back up into the future, but either way is fine since we're just pretending, right? Now, as a new member of the cybersecurity profession, what do you need to be thinking about during your first couple of years? Are there key goals or milestones you need to achieve, or maybe there's some strategies that you want to put in place to make sure that you stay motivated and your career thrives? Like, what should you expect for your first few years as a working professional, and what would it be like? Well, to help answer those questions, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Tameika Reed. Tameika is a senior infrastructure engineer at Expansius. It's a company that provides engineers and technologists to commercial and government clients. But she's also the founder of Women in Linux. It's a nonprofit that supports women who want to obtain and sustain Linux-centric technology careers. So she's going to talk to us today about the first 2 years in your cybersecurity career. Tameika, thanks.
You're welcome. I hope everybody had some coffee or you had something, but we're here. Hope you got energy. Let's get started. So a little background about me. Been in the tech industry now for 20 years. So what does that look like? It looks like a lot of things. So it's like moving, looks like changing and shifting gears all the time, being a constant learner. So let's get started on what are you going to be looking at come day one. Well, day one, you're probably going to be looking at, what does it look like for me walking into a new position? If you're switching careers, like, well, I wouldn't say switching careers, or if you're switching jobs or what have you. But here's some things that I want to kind of bring home to you that you could do and take with you to any position in tech and any position in cybersecurity. So that I kind of kept it something that's useful for you throughout your career and even in your own in your own everyday life. You can find us on all social media for Women in Linux, on meetup.com, on YouTube, everything Women in Linux. You can find me at Tameika Reed on LinkedIn. It should have Expansia and it should have director. I moved up, so sorry if y'all got the wrong, but it's the same person. Okay, so the first thing is you should ask yourself is what type of learner are you? I know it seems kind of trivial, but it's actually really important. And the reason why this is very important is because you need to figure out whether or not you are a visual learner. Are you an auditory learner? Are you a verbal learner? Are you someone that has to have a hands-on experience? Are you someone that has to have some type of social interaction? You may find that you don't really work well in a group. You may find that you work well by yourself and then coming back to a group. You may find that you're actually every last one of these at some point in your career. I know I have been, but you also may find that you are one of the ones that, hey, I need feedback. I need to be in a group because there's something that I feel like I'm missing, or you may just work better in a group. And it's okay for you to say that. And it's okay for you to have these things, which what I have highlighted here are the four main learners that most people are. And it's the four main that most people talk about. But again, like I say, I in my career, I think I've been every last one of these learners and I didn't know it. So no one ever spoke to me about what type of learner I should be. And no one spoke to me about how I can figure that out. So there's actually a test out there that you could actually walk through to try to figure out what type of learning you are. And why is that important? Well, that's important when you go to, say you want to do some more cybersecurity training, or you want to do some training on IoT devices or anything, right? So when you're looking at it, you can say, okay, well, I'm really good at looking at somebody else do this. So maybe I'll follow along with them. Or maybe I'll collaborate with someone so I make sure I have some constant feedback. Or maybe I'll just listen And a lot of people like to just listen and then go and that sparks ideas and then they'll go do from there. I hope that makes sense for everyone. All right. Next thing up that we have to really, really consider is, are you keeping a daily journal of what you're doing? You know how often this comes up? I think everyone who's either been in a job or who's actually been in a job review, one of the key things that come up is, what did you do the whole year? What accomplishments did you make? What failures did you have? How did you overcome them? And where this journaling comes into play is, it helps you when it comes down to, hey, I need to have the ability to keep a track record of my successes. And I don't want to call them failures. I want to call them learning experiences, growth experiences. And then I want to have, I want to make sure that I understood what I did to overcome that. This actually helps you in interviews. So anytime you have to go to an interviewer and they say, especially when you're doing like the Amazon star method, or you're interviewing, they say, hey, tell me a time when you had to overcome an obstacle. Tell me a time where you had to actually help another person out. Tell me a time when you had a hard problem, and what did you do to solve it, or what you didn't do to solve it, right? So some things that some tools that you can use are Evernote. I always recommend people use something like GitLab or GitHub. Create a repository. Just keep a journal of it. You can use anything like TextPad. You can use Word if you want to. You can even use an Excel sheet, but it depends on how descriptive you want to get when you're doing this. And remember, when you're doing this, you're not just doing this for yourself. You're doing this because this helps you create better emails, create better responses when you're talking to people. And it also helps you create better team collaboration because you may share your notes with someone, and somebody may give you some feedback. Hey, well, you did this. I thought this would be a better idea. And then you're able to collab and then come up with a good solution. So you don't have to share your notes, but it could be something that could be worthy for you to share with other team members or somebody that you're comfortable with. And this also helps you when you're trying to guide someone on a solution or mentor someone else. So journaling is very important. So I go back over it again. Evernote, you creating a GitLab repo, creating a GitHub repo, even taking the time and I'm a writer, so I like to write things out and then I go back and type it because I'm a visual person first. So I'm one of the ones that I'll write it down and I put a box by it and star it, meaning like I need to come back to that, or I need to do a deeper dive, or that was super important. So when I transpose that back into my notes, I'll go and do a deeper dive. I'll research it. I'll add in YouTube links. I'll research and find other links that I need to add for that. So journaling is super important. All right, the next one is, and I think this has probably been a constant theme, and this is going to be a constant theme throughout, is being a constant learner. Uh, and you're going to be constantly learning things. So, but here's some things that you can do to help with constant learning. Constant learning, meaning like, hey, I'm always going to be learning something about cybersecurity. Well, yeah, you are, but you're also going to be learning, constantly learning about how other things interact or intersect with cybersecurity, such as creating an instance or cloud security, or even container security, or just they're just different things that are going to always be intersecting with other things. It's a big intersection. So to be constantly learning, some things that I think as you're in your first 2 years that you should be looking at are, one, cybersecurity, cloud cybersecurity or cloud security. Another one is blockchain. That's really huge right now. IoT devices. And I don't know if anyone took a look at in my in the Slack channel. I've already posted a lot of links. But one of the biggest things that's out right now that we're going to need help with across the board is cybersecurity in space and cybersecurity of satellites. Starlink any of those little satellites. I don't know if anybody has been keeping up with um, all the new specs that have been coming out, especially centered around satellites, where we're talking about we're launching little satellites, and they've been doing this now, I think, since 20. I think I want to say since 2019, where they're launching little small satellites around the globe, uh, just for various things. So satellite and AI. What does cybersecurity look like in space? What does cybersecurity look like on Mars? Right. So these are just constantly things that we need to be thinking about. So you're gonna always be a constant learner. You're gonna always be learning, and you're gonna always be applying, interacting, and applying something. All right. Last but not least, to me, like this is like your things that your core that you're gonna take with you is more, but this is to me, this is the core, is your mental health, right? And mental health stability comes in many forms. So what does that mean? Anytime you are applying for a job or you're looking at their benefits, make sure you have some way to have, I don't necessarily want to call it work life balance, but work life mental health balance, because you need to have the ability to say, hey, I need to get up, I need to walk away from this, I need to go walk, I need to go run, I just need to sit on the sofa, I just need to free my mind of this problem and come back to it. I'm having problems on the job. What is going to be my outlet? You remember that journal that I talked about earlier? This is a good opportunity to write that down, to make notes of that. Oh, and by the way, any Slack messages and stuff that you have, when you're at your jobs and stuff, make sure you take screenshots of that. Nothing like coming back to somebody when they say, "Oh, you said this." "Oh, no, I didn't," and you got a screenshot of it. Works every time. I love it. But anyway, so make sure you're protecting yourself. Make sure you got a strong um, outlet to make sure you get out there and take care of yourself when you're talking about mental health, when you're talking about your physical health, when you're just talking about your health, your eating, and so forth. If you have that, because it's going to come up, you're going to get stressed out. Somebody's going to talk to you crazy. Somebody's going to say something. Somebody is a gatekeeper. It's going to happen. So you have to have some type of outlet in order to get over that obstacle if it becomes an obstacle for you. All right, security basics. So to me, security basics are not just your security plus, but you remember all those intersections that we were talking about? Well, that's what I'm talking about. Those intersections, again, cloud security, you can pick any cloud. And we always just refer to cloud security, but there's security on-prem too. So when you're looking at things like OpenShift, Anthos from Google Cloud, AWS Outpost. How do you secure that infrastructure? How do you build upon that infrastructure? So don't just focus, primarily on the cloud, but understand the basic concepts of cloud security, artifact security, how to secure a container, how do you secure an instance, how do you secure a VM, and on top of that, what compliance are you trying to hit, especially when you're talking about, let's take example for Coinbase. Let's take them, they just IPO'd last week, and let's think about how much, what are the basics that they would need for cybersecurity, and what are the basics they would need for compliance. We're talking about blockchain. We're talking about credit card and money information, so PCI DSS. We then take it one step further, and then we start thinking about, well, where are they located at? What country is this transaction in? What country does this transaction actually happen? Even down to who's doing the transaction, like how do we secure that information? Application security. I saw a lot of people talking about application security this morning, but then there's also data security, and there's also security in transit. So those things are security basics. Networking is security basics. TTL, SSL, Those are basics, and they're going to travel with you throughout your entire career. So make sure you understand the fundamentals of not just cybersecurity in the cloud, but cybersecurity on-prem, cybersecurity of database, basic fundamental, because that gives you one, the ability to be in a lot of different conversations. You may not be able to go in depth because you may not want to talk about databases. You may really, really like application security. So, but you have the knowledge to understand what somebody is talking about. And I often find that in interviews that I've done, a lot of people are really, really tunnel vision on this, but the job description is all of this. Now, sometimes there are bloated job descriptions, but they are what they are, right? They are what they are. I can't write them. I don't write them right now, but they are what they are. So my job is to make sure that you're able to at least touch and focus on the primary things that they need, and you're able to talk to them. All right, so this is one of the biggest ones right here: finding your voice and using your voice. All right, finding your voice. I saw someone posted in Slack earlier about Toastmasters for cybersecurity. I think you have to find your voice where you can. All right. And when I say that, I mean being able to go to a meetup and do a 5 minute lightning talk, or being able to go to a conference and do a lightning talk, or just introducing yourself to people. Why is all of this important? Because you never know who you're talking to that can help your career. Someone that sees your work, or someone that sees your or hears your voice, can say, "Oh, I recognize that person. I've seen them on social media. I've seen some of their work." Reach out to them and see if they're interested in an interview. I get it all the time. Writing an article, vlogging, blogging, and if you don't want to do something for your like that for yourself, hop on somebody else's platform and say, "Hey, I'd like to present some information that I think you would find useful. When is a good time that we can link up and maybe do a podcast together? Or when is a time that we can link up and I can come onto your show and show you this information?" Right? So you don't always have to go out and create. You can always just hop on somebody else and then go from there if you don't want to start there first. Another way is when finding your voice is, how do you find that at work, right? So one of the things I try to employ to people is, we all have these daily scrums and these daily meetings. Why not take the chance and ask if you can sit in on somebody else's scrum, especially another group that you're working with? So you may be working in cybersecurity on the app side, but you may also interact with the database side. Sit in on one of their scrum meetings. And ThoughtWorks has a very good idea about this. What it does now is, now you're interchanging information with each other. You're learning how other teams work. You're learning what they do. You can take that feedback and bring it back to your team. You can keep that feedback, for yourself, and say, well, okay, how can I use this in my day to day, or make it better for my team? Or maybe you take something from your team and provide it to them. Just different things that you can do especially when you're at work. Um, never forget the lunch and learns. That's another way. And the other one is, also make sure that you're always taking the time to mentor someone else. You've got 2 years in, just think, somebody behind you has no experience. So how would you take what you've done and help them come along? Remember, each one teach one. So we always want to look back and say, okay, well, look, this person is coming in. How can I be not necessarily a mentor, but just give them an overall guide of how to navigate and some things to look out for? All right. So we've done all the mental health. We've accomplished our journaling. We looked at some ideas of how to communicate, be a better team player, be a better individual. But now we have what I call job review. All right. So job review is me always out there looking to see what's in the industry, what has changed. And I mentioned this before in a couple other talks, is being able to take a job description and visualize their stack, visualize their issues, and visualize their wins. So to me, a job description paints a picture just like you see here that the artist is drawing. I should be able to read that job description and paint a picture of what is actually going on in this particular job. And you should be able to me, you should be able to take something like a visual diagram or even just some blocks on a piece of paper and draw out what they're asking for in a job, right? That helps you, one, visualize what's going on in that particular job, but two, if anything is new that came up, it helps you visualize that too. You may put a question mark there and then go research what that is. So I always tend to take at least 10 different jobs with the same title, and I do a comparison across all those jobs. And then I look to see what the core is for all those jobs. I pull that core out and then I say, okay, these things I don't know. All right. And those things I don't know, I put them in, I divide them up. If I'm looking at apps, if I'm looking at AppSec and I go across the board of 10 different jobs for AppSec and I see some things that are core, I'm like, okay, these are the things I need to make sure I have in my core. And where do I fall on this scale? And what products have I used that are identical or similar to those products? And then I go and say, okay, well, I don't have these. Let me go research those and find out what they are. Most people have a trial subscription that you can download and play with. Download it, play with it. A lot of people have demos online. Take the demo, just get an understanding of it, because now that's going to really set the tone for you on your skill sets. It's going to set the tone for you on what you should be doing next. And it's going to set the tone to say, well, you know what? I want to make a shift into something else. That's not really what I want to do. So if you were in the first 2 years, look at something around the first 5 years, like a junior. Well, I say mid-level, so mid-level. And then look at something that's senior as well too. Just give yourself an idea of what your pathway could look like. And because we change so much in tech, I would tell you to do this at least twice a year, if not more. Just twice a year, just take a dive and see what's out there, because you're sitting in a position, you're doing what that company actually wants you to do. So it may be tunnel vision versus what's actually going on outside of in the world where everybody else is running around playing. So you have to be in that phase of looking for the future, and what you find out there, you may help the company that you're with move forward on some things. So it's just keeping your skills fresh, keeping your knowledge fresh, looking at what's in the industry, and making sure you're doing what you're supposed to do to advance and move forward. Sponsorship. All right. So I hear a lot of people talking about mentorship. I hear a lot of people talking about, where the mentors at, but where are the sponsors at, right? You want to have a connection with someone. And this really, I should have brought this slide up front. I have another slide in here for open source, but I'm going to just go ahead and mention it now. So sponsorship meaning I have a good relationship with someone. We have been talking. I have been showing this person my work. This person has connections. I've been talking about some things that I wanted to do, and they've seen my growth. So sponsorship can come where someone's like, hey, I have a position. I'm a hiring manager. I have a position that's open. You don't have to, and I've seen this happen. You know what? You don't have to do this take home quiz. You could just do the interview process. And somebody just basically walking you in the door. But let's back up. How do we get there? How do we get there? We get there through not just our network, but we get there through our presentations. We get there through our talking. And sometimes talking doesn't mean you talking directly to the person. Talking can be your vlogging. Talking can be your blog. Talking could be the articles that you're responding to. It could talking doesn't have to necessarily mean you're talking one-on-one with that person. I've met people online that I've never ever met in person before, and they're like, hey, I like this talk that you did. It was great. Come interview with our company. We would love to have you. And it's just like that versus you're out here looking for a job. So again, sponsorship. Aim to have sponsorship. Aim to have not just the network, but connections to help you along your career. But in order to do that, you got to build your skill set. You are responsible for building your skill set. If you get to a company and you've been working and you're bored and they have a credit for you to go to a class, you shouldn't be bored. Go take the class, go take that money because they get it every year for you. If you don't use it, they lose it. So why not take the class? Why not take a class? And so you can build up your skill set, whether you're using something like CBT Nuggets, O'Reilly, Safari, or if you're using a Cloud Guru with Linux Academy or Coursera, take something to make sure you're getting your skills up, but network as well too, right? So that's what I mean about sponsorship. We want to aim for sponsorship. Mentorship is great. Mentors are great. Sponsorships are even better when you have that relationship with someone where they can actually walk you in past all the gate the gatekeepers I like to call it. All right? So sponsorship. All right, team involvement. So team involvement comes in many forms. Team involvement comes in forms of, hey, I went and sat on a scrum call with this other team. But what about if you sat in with another team that maybe is doing like an open source project, right? And this is another good way to get sponsorship as well too, because on an open source project, you're working with people from across the globe. You know, what if you want to be that digital nomad in cybersecurity and want to go work on a project in London, or you want to go work on a project in Australia, or hey, I need a vacation. I've gotten my vaccine. I got my shots. I'm gonna double mask and spray everybody down when I meet them. Hey, you can do that. You can go over and be this digital nomad and do other things, but this is all about collaboration. It's all about being getting involved and talking to other people. You can collaborate with internal to the company as well too. That's another thing that I don't think a lot of people do is seek out other if it's a big enough company. Let me caveat that if it's a big enough company, don't be afraid to go, if you're working at Apple and, hey, I work with the Siri team, but now I want to go over here and work on this whole other team that's doing something else. Go sit down and just start talking to people, ask questions, get an introduction. Always say, hey, I saw this other team that was in the newsletter. Reach out to somebody and email them. If they don't respond, they're not the only person on the team. Find somebody else. Just because somebody didn't come to the door doesn't mean somebody's not at home. You just keep knocking, they'll come, right? Or switch doors. So, but again, I'd say team involvement requires you to have the foresight to collaborate with people. Those people should collaborate back. Oftentimes, you'll find on teams people will collaborate back. There are some people that don't want to, but that's okay because they're not the only person on the team. All right. Last but not least, open source. So remember, I was talking about all these open source projects that you can be on. The next question is, where do you find these open source projects at? Right. And this is super important because most people who work on open source projects that are programming are not interested in securing it. Right. So they always are looking for people to come in and test their code, uh, create pipelines for them, make sure that their code doesn't have any memory leaks and so forth and so on. So the Linux Foundation is another place to start for open source project. Of course, there are a lot of open source projects found on GitHub and GitLab, but then there's also other projects that people post on Upwork that they have that they're trying to build. A lot of entrepreneurs that start out are looking to build an application. 9 times out of 10, those people are not thinking about cybersecurity into an in-depth level. They may cover the basics such as, hey, security groups, or hey, I spun up my instance in this. I use SSL's, certs, or a actual load balancer, or an application load balancer. So we taking care of that. But there's so much more to security, and you at this point in time, there is. And a lot of times, most people who are working in open source, that's just not the thing, unless it's a cybersecurity project. That will be the only time I really have seen people like really thinking about security. They're thinking about speed. They're thinking about being fast. They're thinking about how can we push this product out. But we're thinking about how can you push this product out and be secure. The one incident, I don't know if anybody ever remembers this, where a hacker got into hacked this data center, and they had been running for like the I think, I don't know, about 10 years or so. And he wiped out all their backups. The hacker wiped out all their backups, wiped out everything that they ever had, and took the data center down, and they lost their entire business. So again, you know, I want to get the product out there, but I want to be secure when I'm getting this product out there. All right. So we've talked about a variety of things. But one thing that we didn't say was make mistakes. It's gonna happen. It's I you can't I don't know anyone that hasn't been in tech that hasn't made a mistake. It's what it is, right? But those mistakes don't define who you are. Those mistakes are, hey, I did something, it didn't work, I bounced back, right? Take those mistakes and build upon those. Write them down, because you're gonna go back over them and laugh and like, why in the world did I do that? Like the Oracle. Why did I do that? So, but again, you're going to have to understand that the mistakes are they're just learning experiences. That's what they are. I don't know a company that hasn't made a mistake. You can't, for Amazon and Tesla to grow, you don't think they made mistakes? You don't think they ever made a mistake? And they're worth trillions, right? At least 1 trillion. Make the mistakes. It's okay. But I didn't say make the mistakes and then just like, hey, I throw up my hands, I don't know what happened. Make the mistakes and own it. That's really the major takeaway. Make the mistakes, own the mistakes, correct your mistakes, move them to successes. That will be my goal for you. And that is it. We'll open up for Q&A. I think David is going to come back on. I can't see the questions.
I'm here. Thanks. That was fantastic. Actually, the comments in your hallway channel, I know you're going to want to check them out later, but almost everything that you said, people will be like, that, yes, so much, 100%. So it was definitely resonating. I did have a few things that I wanted to bring up though. So I guess first of all, you talked about being a digital nomad, right? And you talked about team involvement projects and things. So do you have any recommendations for how to find good team involvement projects to support being a digital nomad?
Yep. So there's a couple of places, right? So I've been following along, not just with Upwork, but Fiverr as well too. I don't know if anybody saw the young lady that had been writing vlogs on Fiverr and made $387,000 on Fiverr.
Wow.
Again, she works from home. She's not bounded to an office, so she gets to travel. So that's just one way, right? Another one is when we're talking about being this digital nomad, is a lot of people are looking for people to help them produce content, right? And so that content comes in many forms. That content comes in articles, that comes sourcing articles, writing those articles, uh, what is going on in the tech industry in a location where you traveled to, linking up with those with different conference goers in those different locations. That's another way. I find myself often talking to people in Amsterdam on what they're doing in tech. I'm also always talking to people over in California, and I'm in Florida, about what they're doing in tech, people in Portland, what they're doing in tech, and we collaborate and say, let's meet up at a conference and then let's do a talk together, a joint talk together. Hey, let's do a joint talk for this conference that's going on in India, and doing things like that. So I often find conferences are one place, writing articles for others, creating content for others is another one, and then also producing my own content as well too, where I can travel and say, okay, well, look, what's going on in Miami with, I think Miami has a Bitcoin conference coming up. Well, what tech is behind all of that, right? What's going on at that conference where you have vendors writing articles for people who are new into tech. They want to get their actual application out there. So that's just part of being a digital nomad. You're not tied down to it, but you have to set your prices. You have to set up your LLC. I will recommend anyone set up their LLC and not using their own EIN number. And then from there, set your prices and set your tone, set what you're looking to do and produce for that person.
Okay.
I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I think it was a great answer. I actually have something that maybe is a good transition, because you were talking about finding ways to collaborate with people. So another question that we got is, I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but they want to know, for people who are feel like they're introverts and maybe are a little bit feel a little bit awkward when they're collaborating and they're getting started, are there tools or websites or approaches that you could recommend to help them feel a little bit more comfortable reaching out and offering collaboration and doing those things?
Yeah, so in my Women in Linux group, we have a lot of people who are introverts. You know, like they're like, hey, I don't want to work with people no more. I'm tired of working with people. And so what I have recommended for a lot of people like that is, this is where your writing skills really take off, because now you're able to write, and that is your form of communication for being interactive with other groups. Of course, you know, you may have to show up to a meeting and say, okay, what did I work on today? But here are my notes, and here's where you get to be the driver of the visual diagram of what you did and how that translates to what needs to happen, right? So you get to be that visual person. So I always recommend your writing, increasing your writing skills for that. Another one is, and this often happens too, is some people don't like to write. That may not be their medium. I recommend, and this is something I've tried before. It's actually voice record myself on a video, you know. So spin up on your Mac or whatever. Voice record what you're doing and what you did, and then post that video to a Slack feed or what have you, and then let someone review that. That way, that keeps it interpersonal to you, and you don't have to have that audience, but now you're just getting feedback on what you have done, and you don't have, and at that point is like, okay, well, I can increase this and do this better, and you don't have to post that on YouTube. It's just something that you post amongst the group.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. I want to go back and talk about something that you talked about like right at the beginning, and that's like the styles of learning. And I'm going to make it a two-part question because a bunch of people asked similar questions. So the first question is, do you have any recommendations for the best ways to figure out for yourself what kind of learner you might be? And the second part of it is, once you know what kind of learner that you are there particular areas of cybersecurity that, you know, for example, if you are a visual learner, you might be more interested in this, or if you're a hands-on learner, this might be more your speed.
Yeah. So the first one, there are several you can find them online. There are several people that have tests that you can take on defining of what kind of learner you are. But there's also, you may just read not the job description. You may just read the description and find out what actual type of learner you are. Like I say, reading through those descriptions, I've been probably every one of those learners in some job format or other. In terms of what you are, once you find out what you are in cybersecurity, here's my take, and this probably goes a little further than what you may want. Okay, so when I am signing up for different online trainings, I look for how that is going to be delivered. For example, when I look at a Cloud Guru and Linux Academy often didn't have anyone sitting there talking to me. They had someone just typing in on the screen.
Mhm.
That wasn't that works for me, but it didn't that really doesn't work for me. IT Pro TV actually splits the screen where they have someone talking to you and you see their screen. So you may, even though it's visual, you still feel like there's a human connection. So then there's another type of learner, right? Another type of learner is, let me read it first because I need to understand what they're talking about, and then I'll go back and watch that video. So for cybersecurity, the best thing for that I have seen is, if you know that you're going to have to do something like pen testing, and it's going to require you to be, as they put it inside of the actual job description, a self-starter. You're gonna go do this off on your own. You're gonna be this person. My take on that to me, that's the person that's probably more visual. And the reason why I say that is because you're going to go off and do something on your own that you're going to have to bring back to the team in order to, hey, this is what I found. Here are the steps that I took to find that. And, and FYI, I just created a little video for that. And then boom, here you go. So that's what I have found for myself when it comes to working. And it also helps me make sure I get all my information out without interruption. That is probably the best, the biggest key is making sure you're getting all your thoughts out without interruption.
That makes sense. I want to ask you, like, in the second part of that question, there is kind of I guess maybe an implicit assumption that there might be, depending on, what your style of learning is, that there might be some parts of security that would be better for you or harder for you. Do you think that is true, or do you think it's really more of like any style of learning can do any job? They just need to figure out how to train themselves appropriately.
I think any style of learning can do any job, but I think it is not across the same teams, if that makes sense. One team that you work with, your communication style may be one way that works best. And then you may find that another team, their style is another way. And so you may, again, like you may switch between those learning styles and say, okay, well, that worked with this team, but that don't really work over there. So you may end up switching that style. And that's what I have found when it comes to that. So again, explore each one of those learning styles, because you're gonna when you read through it and you do it, you didn't realize that you was doing it because I didn't realize I was doing it. And then when I went back and said, oh, you know what, that's the learning style that I'm doing right now. I'm doing that, and this communication works best. And you'll find too that when you're collaborating, especially in one-on-ones, that some people work better with a different type of learning style. They may not necessarily know, but you may know, so you can adjust to present the information to them.
Okay. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thank you. I have
Mhm.
one more question. You up for another question?
Yeah.
Okay. The question here is, do you have a preferred cyber news outlet that you like to check out, or what is the best way to keep up on cyber related news in the industry?
Yep. So I look at pretty much everything. I think security across everything. But I like looking at Security Weekly is one. But also every Saturday I do what I call tech stocks and jobs. And what I do is all these SPACs that are coming out, I go look and see what their tech stack is. And then I go look and see how they're applying cybersecurity, like what are they using? Like a prime example would be Coinbase or even Tops, right? So
Mhm.
Tops, the basketball trading cards, they're moving into NFTs. So now they're doing like a digital transfer of baseball cards and garbage pail kids and so forth, right? But now the question comes to mind for me is, well, how do I secure that? Right. So I'm gonna go look at their job descriptions and say, okay, well, what are they using for security? What is this other company over here using? I'm trying to get an idea of what their security posture is. And when you're thinking about it, if we're doing some type of digital transfer, that means I need to have some type of compliance rules. Those to me, that goes back to those security basics to me. So I keep my basics very strong, and then depending on the company and what they're using, I'll go do a deeper dive on that company and what they're using just to try to drill that home for that company.
That is perfect. Well, I want to say thank you again for agreeing to come and speak. Like I said,
No.
lots of comments. What the things that you're saying, people are in your hallway. They're obviously finding them very useful, and a lot of them even posting comments on their personal experiences. What you're saying, and they're
Okay.
totally in line with that. So I think it's really helpful, and I think people have got a lot out of it hearing you talk. And I think
I hope so.
one of the folks, sorry, I can't find it now, or I'd credit you, but it said something like it was just like having a heart to heart talk directly with you. So uh,
Well,
that's, I think, maybe the best possible thing somebody could say about this
right. And I want to
session.
make it personal for someone to be able to walk away in the next hour and use it, right? You get, that's what I want. I want you to be able to walk away right now and implement those things.
Well, I think you were very successful at that. So thank you very much.
You're
Very much
welcome.
appreciating
And
you spending the
thank
time
you
today.
all for having me.